Hi guys, it's Allie. Welcome to another Time Travel Tuesday where we combine tingles and nostalgia as decided by you. So I got tons of votes on last week's Time Travel Tuesday for this week's topic, which was awesome. So I want to share with you what the top 5 topics were. Coming in at number 5, we had Full House. Number 4 was Star Wars. Number 3, the show Friends. Number 2, Harry Potter. And number 1, The Legend of Zelda. So, I myself am not super knowledgeable on the franchise. And for those of you who also are not super knowledgeable about Zelda, I do encourage you to stick around because I found a lot of really interesting facts and information about the game. So I think you'll still find it interesting even if you're not a fan of the game. And before I start, also I want to say to those of you who are great lovers of The Legend of Zelda, I won't be sharing, obviously, encyclopedic level of detail about the games, the world, and the lore. And that's just because it's so incredibly vast and rich, as you know. And I just couldn't fit that into a video. But what I will be sharing are some really cool little facts that you may or may not know that I think everyone will find interesting, whether they are a longtime fan of the game or have never even played it. Oh, but before I do that, I also want to show you. I found this little tin of Zelda mints. I'm gonna have a couple while I talk to you. I'm gonna be kind of chewing on them and stuff as I talk. I like the little sound they make. This is a little metal tin. There's a little Zelda Triforce. Okay. Like I said, I learned a lot about Zelda. I really can't wait to share with you some of the awesome stuff I found out. I've never had a Zelda mint before, so I'm really looking forward to having one. I wonder what they taste like. Probably peppermint. Yeah, I think it's safe to say they taste like peppermint. Okay. So, Zelda, The Legend of Zelda is an action-adventure video game. A series of video games that is published by Nintendo and was released in 1986. And it was released on the NES, or Nintendo Entertainment System, which was also known as the Family Computer, or Famicom, in Japan. And just to give you sort of a point of reference, the game was released on an 8-bit cartridge. And to give you an idea, today's game systems actually use 64-bit processors. Multiple 64-bit processors. So it gives you kind of an idea of the leap in technology that's taken place since then. But the game was created by two men named Shigeru Miyamoto and the other man was Takashi Tezuka. Now there was a composer by the name of Koji Kondo who has written, well, he hasn't written all of the music for the game, but he has worked on music for Zelda games since the very first game, and I believe he still does. I'm gonna have two. They're so little. Oh! I wasn't expecting this. They're very minty, but they're also the kind that completely melt in your mouth. You can't really like suck on them. They just sort of dissolve. I think this one isn't doing it. The first one did it. Oh, okay. Nope, this one's hard. I wonder why that first one was so melty. Okay. Anyway. So. Zelda is very widely regarded as one of the most important games and most groundbreaking games of all time. There are several reasons for that. This is weird, you guys. These are all hard, crunchy mints, and the first one I had just melted. I hope it wasn't poisoned. Well, if it was, it's been very nice knowing all of you. Okay. Cool. So, as I said, Zelda is known as a very groundbreaking, innovative, important game in gamer culture. One of the major reasons for that is that it was basically one of, if not the first game to sort of incorporate a story into the game. At the time, most games were just about winning points, winning and losing, but Zelda, Legend of Zelda, is regarded as more of a sort of an epic tale that you experience as you play, that unfolds over time as you play the game, which up until that point hadn't really been done. Not on those types of games, anyway. And the ability to use lots of different types of items in the game was new as well. Dozens of different types of items. And it had this giant world that was so huge and so vast that could just be explored. That was full of hidden secrets and things, which made it an incredibly sort of rich gameplay experience for the users. But what made it probably one of the most innovative elements was that it was the very first console game that had a save function that allowed you to stop playing the game and then resume later and pick up where you left off. That hadn't been done in console games before. Zelda sort of broke the mold on that. It also had, I think, just the original, maybe not, but the original had it's called a second quest, where when you beat the game, you could go through and play it a second time, but everything would be a little bit different, and everything would also be a little bit more challenging, and that was very unique. And it was also very innovative for its time, for the 80s, which is super cool. Music played a really big role in the game as well. It's full of sort of musical puzzles and musical instruments that help the player move forward in the game. And the music will change in real time as you're playing. So, the creator of the game, Shigeru Miyamoto, when he was a kid, he spent a lot of time. He grew up in Kyoto. He spent a lot of time as a kid sort of exploring just the outdoors. And he would spend lots of time sort of roaming the hillside and exploring forests and caves. And he loved the sort of sense of adventure and excitement and wonder that afforded him. And he said that was a major influence in the creation of The Legend of Zelda. Actually decided to name the game Zelda because one day he learned that F. Scott Fitzgerald, the famous author, that his wife was named Zelda, and he liked the name, and that was it. That's how we decided. So after the original Legend of Zelda, there was Legend of Zelda 2, or Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link. That game was not super well received. I think namely because it was a side-scroller for some reason, instead of the top-down perspective. And after that, they went back to top-down. So I'm not sure why it was made a side-scroller. But I think a lot of people didn't love it for that reason. Yeah, so it was considered a bit of a fail. But it was also released in a gold cartridge, like this one. Then after that was A Link to the Past, which returned to the top-down perspective, like I said. But it also added an alternate dimension into the game, and it was called the Dark World, I think. Alternate dimension that you could play in. So there was an animated series called The Legend of Zelda. Very short-lived. There's only 13 episodes. And it was featured on every Friday episode of the Super Mario Brothers Super Show. That's what it was called. When it was in the time slot that the Super Mario Brothers cartoon normally aired. It didn't run for very long at all. And it had a lot of sort of, even though it was short, it had a lot of continuing themes. For instance, in every single episode, Link sort of attempts to get a kiss from Princess Zelda. But every time his plan is thwarted by some outside forces, and they get interrupted. And that happens in every single episode, I believe. And Link has he even has a catchphrase that he says when he's sort of being rejected or shunned or whatever by the princess. He goes, "Well, excuse me, princess." Which may or may not be a reference to either Steve Martin in SNL or Han Solo in Star Wars. But I'm not sure. Might be neither. Might just be a coincidence. I love mints. When the show, when they stopped airing the cartoon, there was a show called Captain N, the Game Master. And they a few times had sort of slightly different versions of Link and Zelda in that show, which was interesting. And the actors who voiced Link and Zelda in the Legend of Zelda cartoon were the same actors that voiced them in Captain N, the Game Master. So I know that with these game cartridges, if there's ever the game wasn't working properly and you suspected that there was dust inside, you would kind of blow on the inside of it to get the dust out. So I thought that might make maybe an interesting trigger. I wanted to try it. So now I understand that when you were in the middle of a game and your cartridge was acting up, you probably weren't blowing on it calmly and gently like that. There's probably a lot more rage behind the gust. But for our purposes. I'll clean. Now I want to share some interesting facts with you. While I stuff my face with breath mints. So, Link, who, if you didn't already know, is the main character of the Zelda world. And when you play a game, you're playing as Link. Link is nearly always, except for I believe two of the games in the series, nearly always shown as left-handed. But what you might not know is that the reason for that is that he's modeled after, or that aspect of him is modeled after, one of the creators, Miyamoto, who is left-handed. Also, this may be common knowledge for Zelda players, but the famous actor, comedian Robin Williams, who's one of my favorite actors of all time, I think he's a really big gamer, and he named his daughter Zelda after the game. When his wife was pregnant with their daughter, they were playing Zelda one day, and it just sort of dawned on them to name the baby Zelda. In, I believe, 2011, there was an art book released that featured all kinds of beautiful artwork and a Zelda timeline, a manga, I think. And the demand for it was so high that it topped the Amazon sales chart, replacing 50 Shades of Grey. There was some little bit of interesting controversy about an element of the game in the original, I believe. Yeah, in the original. I believe it's the third dungeon of the first quest in the original game. That, when you look at it, is shaped rather like, well, not rather like, completely like a left-facing swastika. Now the shape is actually what's called manji, I think, which in Buddhism is a symbol of like good fortune, I think. Peace, maybe. Good fortune. So in Japan, when the game was released, this didn't cause any controversy at all. No one really cared. In the US and Britain, I think, it didn't cause a ton of controversy, but it was still pointed out. So it caused a bit. And then, in the first game, there's a treasure item that's called the Book of Magic. And it was changed from what it originally was to look different, but originally it looked exactly like, well, it looked like a Bible. It was a Bible. And that was changed so as not to cause any controversy or offense. One thing that I thought was really funny is that well, there's a game in the series, I believe it's the first 3D Zelda, called Ocarina of Time. And it had a trailer come out that was changed almost immediately because of how offensive it was. And it said, oh gosh, what did it say? It said something kind of sexist, so they changed it. It's actually pretty funny. It says a few things, and then it says, "Willst thou get the girl, or play like one?" I think that pissed some people off, so Nintendo thought, oh, probably can't say that. Let's change that real quick before anyone notices. But it ran for a little while. Speaking of Ocarina of Time, an ocarina is a little flute, kind of an instrument. And there was after the release of the game Ocarina of Time, there was a big spike in sales of ocarinas all over the place. And I found out about this one store in St. Louis that opened in 2005 or something, after Ocarina of Time came out. Well after. And they sold ocarinas, and they had no idea that Legend of Zelda even really existed, let alone had anything to do with their business. But not long after they opened, they started realizing, as people were coming in to shop in the store, what a gigantic fan base Zelda had. And they realized then that they actually owed a lot of their business success to the game Ocarina of Time. So they now offer, well, they have an entire section on their website, and they offer a very wide selection of Zelda related products. They actually sell a product called the Ocarina of Time. And they have lots of ocarinas in the shape of rupees. Those little jewel things. And I think they even sell a book of music from Ocarina of Time and Twilight Princess that you can learn on the ocarina. Play with this mint tin a little bit. Plus I want to close it up so I don't eat them all. I'm a mint fiend, you guys. So this is what's called the Triforce. And it has 3 parts. I don't know what order they go in, but one of them is the Triforce of Power. Oh, wait. Like I said, I'm not super knowledgeable. This is the Triforce. Okay, so I don't know exactly what they're called, but there's one for power, one piece for wisdom, one piece for courage. And basically, in a nutshell, the goal of the game is to unite all 3 pieces of the Triforce in order to defeat Ganon, who's the bad guy, rescue Princess Zelda, and bring peace to the Kingdom of Hyrule. And that's the goal. I like the little noise that the mints make in the tin. And this has little, I don't know if you can see. Maybe you can, it has little sort of divots, little dots. Along the side, I like that little noise. So, Legend of Zelda is obviously hugely influential, and it made just an incredible impact on gaming, period, but like gaming culture, I guess. It's actually been an influence on a lot of very popular role-playing games that people are playing today. I'd say it was probably a pretty direct influence on like Final Fantasy. And then in the game Fable 3, there's definitely some Zelda influences there. There's a scene in a graveyard, or not a scene, but a part of the game in a graveyard, and there's a tombstone. Where if you go up to the tombstone, the description says, "It is dangerous to go alone. Take this." I think that's the phrase. It's just a very popular, well-known phrase from Legend of Zelda. And so then when you dig up the stone, the tombstone, it gives you a toy sword. And then there's also a really long quest chain in World of Warcraft that has a lot of references to Legend of Zelda. There's a character, or a little gnome, I think, that is named Lincoln, like Lincoln, and he's pretty much dressed exactly like Link. He even says some of the same things. But I think he says some of the things that he says some of the things that Link says in this cartoon, because in the game Link mostly didn't speak at all. So the game had a huge impact on the world of gaming. It made a ton of sort of groundbreaking innovations. I forgot to tell you this earlier, but I thought this was really interesting. Before the game was released, the big guys at Nintendo weren't totally sure about it. And they did some pre-release game testing, and all the people that played kind of complained that it was too difficult and too confusing, and they didn't know what was going on. So what Miyamoto did, instead of making it easier, is he made it harder, which is risky, but it turned out to be a good move. I believe he made it so that at the beginning of the game, you no longer start with, Link no longer starts with his sword. You actually have to find the sword first. Whereas before, I guess the game started with the sword already in your possession. And he had a really strong feeling that he was on the right track. And his philosophy, I guess, was that if a game is challenging and it forces you to think about what you're going to do next, which a lot of games weren't doing at the time, but if a game does that, then that forces communication and discussion between players. And he knew gamers, he knew gamer culture, and he knew that gamers talked to each other and shared information and tips and tricks. So he was a really smart man. He knew that if he made it so the game was challenging and different and unlike other games, that everyone playing it would have to talk to each other. Which does, the way I see it, does two things. It obviously will help increase sales, because the word of mouth effect is probably the best marketing tool there is. But also, I think that, and I think he knew this, I think it creates a more rich, sort of immersive, exciting, impactful gaming experience. And the truth is that this game is very highly respected and well loved by the people who grew up playing it for pretty much that exact reason. They had a gaming experience that they had never really had before, that no one had really ever had before. And that made Legend of Zelda something really special. You have learned some interesting facts about The Legend of Zelda today, because I definitely did. And I also hope that I didn't get poisoned by my Zelda mint. And that I'll get to see you guys again soon. Don't forget to leave your vote for next week's Time Travel Tuesday topic in the comments below. And I'll be seeing you guys again very soon. Until then, sweet dreams.